here. All right, we are live there. And then let me just get this going here. 1 sec. All right, just checking to make sure this is all good. All right. What's going on here? All right. Oh, it's not coming up. All right, just give it a minute. All right, we're good there. All right, just give me a second, just setting up. Welcome right to the room. All right, just getting things set up on Facebook and Instagram, and then we will begin. So just hang tight, give me a quick minute. All right, I think we're good here. That's the last one. That should be good. Okay. All right. And we are good. All right, frontal blessings to everybody. I know it's been a minute. There's been a lot of, I've been busy with a lot of stuff, readings and classes and all that. We'll get into that in a sec. All right, so we are live on Instagram. We are live on Instagram, Primordial Chaos 9. We're on Facebook at Primordial Chaos. And we are now live on YouTube. Okay. So I want to welcome everybody to the show. Okay. Just make sure we get this up and running. All right. So frontal blessings to everybody. I'm just going to give everybody a minute to get in the room. All right, so let me just run through a couple quick announcements before we begin. Okay. Hey, David, what's going on? Yeah, I text your wife back about doing the video. We definitely, I'm gonna try to give you a buzz when I get off of here. Okay. Yeah, we will definitely link that up. But it's just been a lot of stuff going on. I'm busy, but we will get it done. I will definitely get with you. Definitely today, or when I get off of here, or I'll give you a buzz tomorrow during the day. We're gonna set that up. We're gonna get that done. Definitely something we got to do. All right. Real quick, let me run through a couple of things just to give you the happenings of what we got upcoming. All right, on the Patreon page coming up, a couple of things. I posted. Rabbi, I did get your emails. I'm going to get with you too. We're going to set up a time to link up. I did get them. Again, it's just been a lot of stuff going on. Been a little bit busy with personal stuff and work stuff. So, but we'll get that taken care of. So I'll reach out to you after this too. All right. All right. All right, cool. All right, so a couple things. One, on the Patreon, if you haven't checked out the Patreon page, patreon.com /Beniti, Vaniti. This Friday, the 19th, for those on Patreon, we have a Drums of Death ritual. It's a live drumming. If you are a member of Patreon, you'll be able to access that ritual. I also posted a ritual. I'm sorry, not a ritual class we will be doing with Tata Nahisi. We will be doing a whole series on Palo Mayembe. We will be doing a whole, it's going to go into Kimbanda. It's going to go into other forms of African witchcraft and sorcery. Brother Tata Nahisi, who's 40 years initiated elder in the Palo Mayembe path. Myself being 20 years. Okay. We're going to be, the advertisement that we put up on the series, we're going to be talking about the traditional and the non-traditional way. So everybody can see both aspects of it, right? Because everybody is constantly asking about traditional and non-traditional ways. So we're going to go in depth to both of that. Okay. We're going to talk about both paths. We're going to show you some of the processes of being initiated and how you work it in a non-traditional way, which is something that's very important. Okay. Especially for what we do. All right. So that'll be a series that's going to start on March 13th. Now, the difference with that series, okay, for those that are on Patreon, they'll have access to it if you're on Patreon. For those that are not on the Patreon page, you'll be able to sign up for that series if you want. It'll just give you access to that series. All the information for that you can find right there on the Instagram. You can find it right here on the YouTube in the community section. And then you could also find it on the Primordial Chaos Facebook as far as how to sign up. That'll be on Saturday. Well, the first one will be Saturday, March 13th. Okay. 3 p.m. It'll roughly, each session will go roughly about 3 hours. Okay. So that's going to be on March 13th. We got the drumming ritual this upcoming Friday night, the 19th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you haven't checked out the Patreon page, check it out. Patreon.com/Baniti, Baniti. The Patreon page is where I do private classes, lectures, rituals. There's a mentorship program, et cetera, et cetera. There's a tier on there I'm sure you can find. I added about a month or so ago, I added the African witchcraft and sorcery tier and the Egyptian Heka tier, because people have expressed an interest in focusing on those two paths. So those two tiers focus on those two paths exclusively. And again, on the Patreon, it gives you more of the ability and more of a private setting to go in a little more in-depth personal, whereas here, we'll just go into a certain degree. All right. So you can check that out. If you are interested in two things with the readings and the consultations. That's what I've been extremely busy with. That's why you haven't seen me probably in over a month. Because as you know, the first 2 months of the year, I do yearly readings. This is the last month for the yearly readings. I know a couple of you guys, quite a few of you guys have reached out to me about that. After February, I no longer do those because it doesn't serve the purpose. Time runs out to do that type of spiritual consultation / reading. But that is still going on till the end of this month. In addition to the regular readings, if you're interested in a Klipothic demonic reading, reading with Santa Muerte and the spirits of the dead, or if you are interested in a shadow work reading, which, as I've said before, is a great place to start. If you're trying to figure out where to start on this path, shadow reading uncovers aspects of ourselves that we need to work on, which is critical, which is important. Because everybody that comes on this path always asks, where should I begin? Well, you should always begin with what things about yourself do you need to address, right? And the shadow work reading deals with and uncovers those aspects. So any of those readings or just a consultation, which can be used for anything you want to discuss or talk about, reach out to me for any of those things that I mentioned. at khnum19@gmail.com. The Knum19 email. Everything's in the description box right here in the video. Just go to the description section. Everything I just ran through, you'll find it in there, except for the yearly readings, because again, that's something I only do in January and February, or December, January, February. This will be the last month for that. All right. Journey of the Black Adept Conference number 3. As I said, we always put it out there after we do them. Again, last week in October, the 29th to the 31st. All right. That will be obviously depending on what's going on with the COVID. Hopefully things, as we see some improvement. As you know, this last year we had was the first year that we had to do it virtual because of what was going on. We still are planning to do it live and in person like the first year. Getting a hotel with a conference room. We'll have a separate location for the rituals. That was the original plan for last year. We're going to stick to that plan again unless something changes. Obviously, we got to follow protocol as far as whatever the local state protocol is. But as of right now, definitely mark the dates. Either way, we'll be doing it again. And again, we are aiming and focusing where we could do it in person together. Okay. So we will definitely aim for that. Okay. So that's the 29th to the 31st. All right. 3-day event. Mark that down. And again, even though we are months away from that, mark that date down. We're definitely going to be doing it that day. All right. So gets me into the topic I kind of wanted to go through tonight. We want to talk about a couple of things, actually. It's not really just going to be limited to this. Two. As we know right now, what I've been seeing from talking with a lot of you guys, even on the Patreon page, the topic of being consistent, getting results in the work that you do keeps coming up, right? As I've said many times before, that's really what this is all about, okay? Getting results. It's not so much trying to align what you do with what somebody else is saying or doing, because that may not equate in agreement to what everybody else is doing, right? This is not about mimicking or copying anybody's personal stuff, right? This is about taking whatever system you so choose, making it work for you however you see that fit, all right? Getting results, one, when we get into the understanding of being consistent at what we do, okay, which is critical. That's one. Without being consistent, you're not going to get no results on anything you do. Now, a lot of people send emails about they did this, they did that. They're getting frustrating. They're not getting results. Some will send emails and say they did a certain working, and they'll describe getting results, and then they'll say, well, I did this. I'm not sure if I should have did that way. If you got results, it's irrelevant. And then the question is, what are you gauging it to, right? So we got to get out of that preconceived notion. I don't care who it is. We got to get out of that preconceived notion that there's a certain way to do things, okay? There's only a certain way to do things if you're in line with conformity, right? The old saying, and I posted that a while back on the Instagram page. You have your way of doing things, I have mine. As far as the right way to do things, it doesn't exist. It only exists if you're in a system where you follow something, a dogma, okay? It's only in line if you feel obligated to be personally loyal to something based on faith, right? That's when people feel the obligation as far as if they need to do things a certain way. As I said before, when you're reading all these books, and we're going to go through some stuff tonight, when you're reading all of these books, you're not supposed to, again, word verbatim, as I said before, when you're doing rituals, designing your ritualistic work, you're not supposed to copy word verbatim and carry out those rituals exactly how they're written in the book. Okay? You're supposed to add your own personal touch and creativity to it. Because you have to understand, when you're reading those rituals and a lot of these books and grimoires and all the stuff that we read, the books are the tools, they're the roadmaps, they're the guides. They are not supposed to manipulate us to the point where we feel compelled to follow them word verbatim, okay? Because that person that writes the book, when they've created or written a ritual, they have stamped it with their own personal energy, and that's fine. But when you copy it exactly, you're actually tapping in to that exact same energy. So it doesn't mean you can't use the layout, the format, use some of the information in there, but you should put your own personal touch on it, right? This is why this is called a path of self-mastery, right? Again, as I said many times before, the key in that word is self, okay? It's not about, look, it's not about, like I say, clinging on. Some people get comfortable, and I'm seeing this in some of the dialogues back and forth. People gravitate towards a certain path, even within this path, and they get comfortable, right? As I said before, you got to understand the fine line of traditional paths and non-traditional paths. This is a non-traditional path. So you can't gauge this shit to anything that exists, because a lot of the practices, a lot of them are based on creating your own methodology, okay? That's what self-mastery is. I don't give a fuck what anybody says, okay? Everybody's entitled to their opinion. I don't give a shit who you follow or what you think you know. The shit is irrelevant if you ain't getting no results. Because we have a lot of people out here, as I said many times before, they got book knowledge, they can regurgitate shit, but their life is a hot fucking mess, okay? They piss broke, right? And it's not to judge people based on finances, but you shouldn't be broke if you're on this path, right? We got a lot of hoteppers out here. We got a lot of people who claim to be conscious, and they're a poor living example of it. They don't know shit except for shit that they've read in books. And when you ask them to produce the results of what they claim they know, they can't do it. That's not what we do. Okay? So you can walk around, read a million books, listen to a million lectures, regurgitate a bunch of information, but what good is it if you can't apply it? So what do we gauge it on? Your example. It's that simple. So if you claiming to have all this knowledge, first thing I want to see is your example and the results. You can't be living in mom's basement, driving a hoopty, and talking about your fucking avatar and you can levitate and you got all this knowledge. Poor example. So there's a disconnect from the subjective and the objective. Okay? Just because you put on a dashiki and a big ass ankh and some nice oils and say hotep, that doesn't mean shit. Okay? Doesn't mean anything. It's the results, right? So let's just say you practice a certain path. Let's just say Palo Mayambe, right? We'll just use that for an example. We'll throw that out there. Show me the line of results, the fruits of your labor that it has produced in your life, far as your family life, personal life, finances. Because remember, this path here, right? Important thing about this path here, okay? When the results factor, okay? If you have that track record of results, and I want to back up to something I said earlier about the copying and not having to mimic, because you might have methodologies, let's just say, to the mainstream person that's non-traditional, right? It may not be in line with certain ideologies, let's just say, right? You've got to learn to get your mind into the concept. It's irrelevant, again, if results are being produced. Okay? That's it. And once you are able to accept and embrace that and not worry about what other people say as far as certain systems you might incorporate, because again, a lot of what we do is non-traditional. We take a lot of things into one and mix them, but we make it work for ourselves. This is a harder thing, okay, for some people to grasp because they're too concerned about what others may say, right? And as I've said over the last 6 months, let's say 6 months, well, probably longer, all right, where people are mixing what they're calling a cult and left-hand path, which it's not, with a lot of traditional bullshit, okay? You can't still, and as I said this before, you can't still be using traditional things and be slaves to them and worshiping them, okay? And then saying you're on the path of self-mastery, okay? Okay, it's easy. Where people get these things mixed and intertwined and really are not being honest with themselves because they stay in those paths because it's comfortable. Okay, they don't really understand when you, because I always ask people, what's your definition of a cult or left-hand path? Okay, I always ask those questions. All right. That's what we're going to do. We ain't got time for nonsense. All right. There are a lot of people, and again, and then we're going to get into what I want to get into here, but I want to address some of this. This is important. Who, no matter how many times we say it, no matter how many times we talk about it, okay, there are certain people who are still stuck in old paradigms. It keeps coming up, okay? They want to play Oishi. They want to play working with the ancestors or worshiping the ancestors. We don't worship the ancestors. I've said that a million times before. I still hear people using that word. Worship is for weak people that have to cling on to external things outside of themselves because they don't have confidence in themselves. Okay? So, having said that, I've talked about that many times before in the past. Having said that, let's move on to tonight's subject matter. The devil's Quran, the Shaytan, and the Jinn, right? If you go into Eastern mysticism, we've talked before in the past on Melik Taus. We've talked about the Yazidis. We've talked about Al-Jilwa, the Black Book. We've talked about a lot of those paths that are connected to that spiritual system, right? There was a book that I came across, which I thought was interesting because it covers certain areas of topics and study that we need to really look at and address, okay? And I'll give you the reference, and I would suggest you guys get it. And we'll talk a little bit about it. It's actually a book called The Devil's Quran, right? This is the book. I don't know if it's just by a press company or is there an author to this. Anyway, it was put out in 2014. All right. The interesting thing, the concept that they came up with this, and it's from Martinet Press. Again, I'm going to put it on there so you guys can see it. I would encourage you guys to go ahead and take a look at that. What they did was, and when we go into the intro, just to give you a little history on it. Where is it? On how this came about. It's actually a small Quran with surahs dealing with the archetype we know as Iblis / Shaytan, father of the Jinn, right? Because obviously there's that mystic, spooky, religious concept. If you're religious, you're not gonna get this. So you're wasting your time. All right. Again, what we talk about here is a cult left-hand path. So you might get offended if you're a Christian, Muslim, or Jew. I really don't care, but point being is this might not sit too well with you, but that's not what this platform is for. All right. What's the origin of this book? All right. Well, let me give you just a brief, quick history. In 2011, some photos of this manuscript were sold to Martinet Press by a freelance journalist returning from Iraq. The note attached to the folio pages indicated a shelf mark at the University of Karbala with a date in the mid-18th century. Okay, the 18th century. The title of the manuscript was listed somewhat curiously as Quran Shaytan, right? In English, meaning the devil's Quran. This seemed puzzling at first glance as from the layout and format. So I just want to establish, okay? This is a manuscript that was traced back to ancient Babylonian or Iraq in the 18th century, right? Just to give you a little history of this. And again, we're not going to sit here and waste time and energy. Whether you want to accept the validity of it or not, I couldn't care. That's irrelevant. I'm just giving the history for those that want to research it. I just think there's some key components in this of what we do on this path. All right. But just to give the history, and then you guys can do further research on yourself. Right. At first glance, it appeared to be a standard antique copy of the Quran. The initial pages included the expected Surah Al-Fatiha, right, which is the opening, right? Etc. Right? And also Surah Al-Baqarah, which is the second one, chapter of the cow, right? Which is the longest surah in the Quran, right? So understand what they're saying. The manuscript had those two chapters in it, the Fatiha, Surah Al-Baqarah, right? And then the surahs that this so-called manuscript makes up. Okay. Largely ignorant of the Arabic, we consulted with a translator who reviewed the work and provided a preliminary translation, right? So when this manuscript was turned over to this press company, they took it to a translator, and there were 10 surahs in this, which are non-canonical. All right, I just want to be clear. Okay, when they say non-canonical, it just means it's not accepted by religious scholars, and that really only holds validity and weight if you are a religious person. So shit don't mean anything to us. So it's not accepted as a valid scripture. Just like you got lost books of the Bible, right? You got the Book of Barnabas, right, which is not accepted as a legitimate, canonical text according to religious scholars, etc. So that's what they do through history. They give these fancy titles to men who say they're a scholar in this and an elder in that, and men, not God, but men, have to give the validation of what's acceptable or not, because it has to be in line with their personal religious agenda. So that's really what they're saying, right? The style of the surahs appears similar to the standard classical dialect of the Quran, but these surahs deviate from Orthodox Islam in both theology, in theories of the Creator, right, and cosmology, dealing with science and creation, right? Okay. The tone of the text is clearly heretical by either Sunni or Shiite standards, right? And that's the other thing with Islam, right? You got all these different sects, and they fighting and warring and killing each other. They're no better than Christians who fight, war, kill, and destroy each other because they can't agree on a book where they claim they believe in the same God, but you have for years Sunnis, Shiites, all different sects of Muslims been at war killing each other and calling it holy wars in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what we do is fucked up. But they take their religion, and mind you, let's establish this. 90% of them don't even follow the Quran, the 114 chapters of the Quran. They don't. They follow the hadith, or the tales of men. Bukhari, Molani, all these different men, they're more, and the hadiths are fucking crazy. It's almost It's almost like the Jews who have the Talmud, where they condone having sex with little young girls and children and all this crazy shit, right? If you look at the average Sunni Muslim, they follow Hadith more than they do Quran, because there's a lot of things that these traditional Muslims follow today that is really goes against the very Quran. And let me say this, and I've read the Quran front to back many times over the years, many times, okay? And I'm not saying it's a bad book. There's a lot of good moral principles you can get out of it. It doesn't promote like mainstream. See, these people that claim to be Muslims that the media pumps up give real Islam a bad name, because not every Muslim is a terrorist. Okay, let's establish that. Not every Muslim has a radical approach to their religion and spirituality. The media would like you to believe that, though, because anytime something goes down that's negative or involves terrorism, notice how they always point out the individual's religion. They don't do it in America. Well, we just had terrorists attack our state capitol on January 6th. Why not call them what they are? Domestic terrorists. Stop giving them a path. It wasn't, stop saying it was a protest. It was a riot. No, as we see the weeks in the last month and a half as it's unfolded, we see what all these newer videos are popping up. Those people committed acts of terror. But just because it was Americans on American soil, we want to call it politely, it was a protest or a riot that got out of hand. No, those fucking people committed domestic terrorism. Call them what they are. Okay? Let's not sweep it under the rug. I myself, as I said, one of the first religions going back to the 90s, I was in Islam for a while, in my younger, naive days. I have a lot of friends today that are good practicing peaceful Muslims, though I don't agree. We have some intense discussions. We agree to disagree, and it's all cool. But I know there are some good, and I've said this before in previous videos, there are a lot of good practicing Muslims. So let me put that out there because of what we're getting ready to talk about. I want to make that clear. All right. And let's not label everybody that practices Islam a terrorist, because again, when you turn on the news here in America, right, when somebody commits, it's funny how the media does this. When somebody commits a crime, a killing, a violent crime, they don't go, John Smith, the Christian murderer, right? They don't do that, right? They don't point out here in America on the news when crime and violence and killing takes place. They don't point out that individual's spiritual beliefs. But if something happens when it involves somebody, let's say, that belongs to the religion of Islam, they are very keen to point out their religion, to train your mind to think that Islam is the fuel behind that. All right. Now, let me, on the flip note, I'm not saying there isn't radical Islamic extremists out there. Okay. There is. Okay. So let's not act like that don't exist. All I'm saying is you deal with people, okay, for what they are and how they carry themselves. Okay. So again, I respect any Muslim, Christian, or Jew, though I don't agree. There's a lot of fallacies and inconsistencies in those rooms. I respect any of them that stays consistent with their beliefs and faiths, but the most important thing, don't try to force them on somebody else. So I have no problem. If you're a good practicing Muslim, Christian, or Jew, and it's made your life better, power to you. But you also have to understand there's a lot of people that don't agree and are in disagreement to that path or lifestyle, and you have to accept that too. That's just the way it is, right? So I have no problem with anyone that comes from a monotheistic belief or background, as long as you don't try to force your beliefs and ideology on anybody. All right. All right. So let's get that out of the way. I just want to throw that out there. So the tone of this text is clearly heretical, either by Sunni or Shiite standards. The voice of the author is divine, but not the Islamic divinity. The divine author self-identifies as the Shaytan, right? Well, when we're saying Shaytan, right, we're using the Arabic term for what we would say in English as Satan, right? They say Shaytan is father of the Jinn, right? We'll talk a little bit about that too, right? Because this gets spooked out in a lot of religion. Okay, and certainly, okay, I'm sorry, let me back up. I skipped a section here. As the Shaytan through the title is rarely used, but inverts the standard spiritual hierarchy to claim precedence over Allah, referred to as the blind one. And certainly in antiquity, various cultures recognized the existence of the supreme chthonic spirit, so dreadful that it was prohibited to speak its name. That nameless spirit, it seems, is the divine force that manifests through the text. So these 10 surahs, which is being titled the Devil's Quran, is being spoken by this archetype called Shaytan. Let's establish that. So I'm trying to lay the scene out for you. I'm trying to give you a little bit of history. I don't have time to get into all the history. I'm trying to show you the origin of this manuscript. Now, again, you do your research. You come to the conclusion of the validity of it. I don't care. It's irrelevant. I just want to point out some points, give you the knowledge of it. Remember, what I do on this channel, I'm not trying to convince people. I'm not trying to tell you how to think. I'm not trying to tell you how you should perceive it. I'm just putting the information out there. You do with it as you see fit. You can love it, like it, or hate it. It's irrelevant to me. It doesn't matter. That's not what I do. I don't tell people what to do and not to do. Shit is irrelevant. All right. Some of the language and themes are clearly Gnostic and perhaps drawn from Sufi or Persian sources. Now, Sufism is a very interesting spiritual path that I've talked about many times over the years. Now, depending on what Islamic circles you go, some people frown and look down on Sufism, and some people embrace it or accept it. Now, obviously, there are different branches of Sufism too, right? And I don't even like that word ism, right? Because when you put the ism on the end of it, it kind of gives it a negative connotation. The Sufi path is a very powerful path. It's a very mystical path. It's about tapping in to the inner divinity that resides within the individual, because the Sufi is trying to connect with that oneness, right? Now, there's a lot of occult aspects depending on what branch of Sufism or Sufi you study, right? Because they connect with some of these spirits and energies that we're talking about, or going to be talking about. And though some of it, there are some Sufi orders that kind of veil it behind the Quran and Islam. They might use the Quran on the surface. And some have to do that depending on their regional and their location, because they'll be persecuted by certain radical Islamic extremists, because in certain sects of Islam, you can't have your own opinion, right? When you get the nutheads who are, fanatical and want to follow Sharia, Islamic law, where they still think we're living in barbaric times, such as the Taliban, right? And groups like that, Al-Qaeda, right? You can't express and have your own opinion, right? It doesn't exist, okay? But the Sufi path is a very interesting one. It's a very intense path. When we say enlightenment, not artificial luminary light, intellect. It definitely gives you the intellect, right? Then it goes on to say, also the text mirrors certain Muslim practices, but with clear deviations in direction, method, and intention. The manuscript includes some simple images in Persian miniature style, but they're only marginalia and have not been included except for the planetary sigils, all right? And then the last thing, again, not to stay too much on the history, because I'm not going to get into all this right now. I'm going to skip down here. Where is it? Okay. The Antinomian path, right? It is reasonable to ask, how does the publication of this manuscript benefit this? This is why I want to do it. So here's what I'm trying to get to. The spiritual milieu of today. The answer lies in the firm conviction that far too many authors proclaiming themselves to be experts on contemporary left-hand path and antinomian practices have forgotten that the original left-hand path and antinomian paths were and always have been paths of devotion. Self-deification is all very good, but how many spiritual systems genuinely cause the changes in their practitioners that one would expect to see? Question mark. Okay, let me say that again. That's what I was talking about in the beginning, about being a living example of the path, being able to see the results, right? And this is why I think this book and this manuscript, regardless of if you think it's valid or not, brings up a lot of good, important points, okay? And the answer is few and less, right? This is because despite many good intentions, many modern magicians have lost faith in the dark powers, which have always been involved in the work of transformation. Now, what the text is going to show you, like every other path shows you, there's an imbalance, man. You can't, it's not all about light and it's not all about darkness. You need both. There's going to be people that disagree with that. And again, it's irrelevant. It's fact. When people are submerged on a right-hand path or lighter philosophy where everything is light and love, peace and love, but everything around them suggests otherwise, there's a disconnect between the subjective and the objective consciousness, okay? We know all things emerge from the darkness. So as a lot of theologians in the last couple hundred years have presented, what is darkness? Why is it always presented as something evil, according to religious dogma and religious standards, when you go into the holy books and according to their holy books, God existed in darkness before he said, let there be light, right? So if this very being that they wholeheartedly give their entire life to and worship existed in darkness, darkness cannot be a bad thing. But why is it promoted as such? When the light came is when the chaos started to be birthed into the universe. So we got a question: are we talking about darkness from a spooky perspective of how it's presented to us, or is it a state or a state of existence that we're talking about here? As you know, we talk always about the primordial chaotic energy that emerged from that darkness, and from that primordial chaotic energy, all things manifested, right? That's what they say. So we got to establish the spookiness of what the non-spookiness of what we are calling darkness. Now, it goes on to say, the gods are not mocked. The true antinomian spirituality is generally transgressive in that it not only compels the magician to go beyond all human limits, but to interact with real spiritual beings that are inimical to humanity on many levels. Now, let me explain what the hell that means, just so we're clear. The problem with religious faith, and faith without works is dead. That's what their book said. To be completely religious and rely on faith alone is to have trust and confidence in things that are not seen and not proven. That's different from personal faith, okay? Because really, you have to understand this. You can be a Muslim, Christian, or Jew. What's really fueling your faith is you. It's not really Allah. It's not Jesus. It's not Yahweh, Yahuwah, Jehovah, whatever title you give your creator. It's your firm belief in that. Okay, because then here's where it goes to shit. Then this is where they have a hard time trying to put it all together and come to grips. But when something negative goes down, some tragedy strikes. Listen to look at the ignorance. We've all seen this on the news. It could be a bombing, a plane crashing. People will go, oh, praise God, praise Jesus, or alhamdulillah. I survived. God spared me. But God didn't spare the other people that died in that plane crash. Explain that to me. Okay? Don't get spooked on me, because the same God you're giving thanks and gratitude to that spared and saved you is the same God that took the rest of people out on that plane. Okay, now you can get spooky and go, well, God works in mysterious ways. God has, here's the classical answers. God has a plan for everybody. The Lord works in mysterious ways. Just say you don't fucking know and you don't understand. Stop trying to convince yourself. Because if you really look at it, they're the polar opposites of the same thing. There's a positive nature to God and a negative, a good or a bad nature. That's all. If you go into the book of Isaiah, the 45th chapter, it clarifies that for you. Right there, you read it. Start from the couple of verses, go down to about 7, 8, or 9. It says, I am the Lord your God. So it's clear who's speaking, right? It's clear who's speaking. I, the Lord God, create good. And then here's the kicker. And I create evil. I create the light and I create the darkness. I, the Lord God, do all these things. So the very God of their Bible. Now, the Muslims will say, well, we don't believe in the Bible. It was altered with. It was tampered with. See, the Muslims are good at picking and choosing. And then the Christians, when you present them with that, they'll have their own interpretation of it. Okay? They like to pick and choose what's literal, allegorical, or metaphorical. You can't do that. You can't have it all those ways. We know it's all a bunch of bullshit. But what I'm trying to say is I'm using their text to show a point. Their very Bible in the book of Isaiah says God creates good and evil. So when something bad happens, you cannot blame it on this character, the devil, because did not God, according to your scriptures, create the devil? And if you disagree with that, then your God is not the all omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient being that you thought he was. I love how they separate the two. See, that's my problem. Don't say when something bad, oh, that's the devil. I seek refuge in Allah from Shaytan the cursed, right? That's what the Muslims will say, right? But did not Allah create Shaytan? And how and why did Allah allow Shaytan or the devil or Satan or Lucifer to have this power? You know what's fucked up about it? You get your answer if you go into the book of Job, right? Apparently God's a gambling man. He must hang out at Vegas. Because if you read the story, I believe it's in the first couple chapters of Job, where it says, the sons of God presented themselves before the Lord. Okay. And here's the fucked up part. God didn't even know where Satan was coming from. He says, Satan, where hast thou comest from? And he says, from walking to and fro in the earth, up and down in it. This is what he says. Now, first of all, the problem I got with that is God didn't even know. He's supposed to be omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient. He didn't even know where Satan was, where he was coming from, and what he was doing. He asked him, where you coming from? He says, from to and fro in the earth, walking up and down in it. And then, because he's pissed off, he goes, have you considered my servant Job? Right? Look at this egotistical. And you talk about having the stories twisted. This person, this character, this God character speaking in Job here, is say, have you considered my servant Job? Considered him for what? They make this bet where you could basically mess with him, make his life miserable. You just can't physically kill him. So God has this bet. What's the bet about? I guarantee no matter what you do to him, he'll stay loyal to me. So here's even the sicker thing to think about. Here is a being, Job, that God created, right? Because religious people say God created everything in the universe, human beings, etc. He has a bet with this character called the devil to show the devil who Job's loyalty is to. Doesn't God know everything any one of us think before we do it? And then here's the Christians. You could hear them. Oh, God, no. See, God tests us. God doesn't need to test anybody. Stop that shit. If you created something and you're the ruler, the owner, the maker of it, you don't need to test shit. Stop it. Stop trying to find excuses and answers for shit you can't explain. That's all. That's all you're doing, because when these questions are presented, it's never presented, and you never really gave it thought to look at it from that perspective, so you get upset. You might get mad, or you might find some place of comfort or veil to put up to hide behind, like God tests people. Well, the creator of the boundless universes don't need to test shit. Because if he does, it's confirmation he is not certain in his knowledge and what he knows. Okay? So we have to understand this concept of God. It represents just an energy. The difference of what we accept on this path is we know it all comes from the same source, good or bad. They're just polarities of the same thing. That's my whole point. Right? They're just polarities in varying degrees of the same thing. That's what the Hermetic principles of Tahuti are. It's trying to show you that in order to understand the objective realm or the physical, one must master their subjective and spiritual consciousness. So you hear people talk about the God energy or the God force, right? What does Yahweh mean when you translate it? It's giving you the breakdown of the agreeable and disagreeable nature of God and what that energy represents. We, from a Luciferian perspective, right? That's what Lucifer represents. He embodies light and darkness simultaneously. That's what Shaytan represents. That I'm gonna tap into a little bit about that tonight. Now, you're not gonna, if you come up through a traditional religious dogma, especially Islam, you've already been programmed what Shaytan and the Jinn is from men, not from this being called Allah, right? Which, by the way, there is a female counterpart to Allah called Alat with a T. And what most people don't know is the Kaaba, right? Or the square that Muslims make their pilgrimage to Mecca in, which is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. At one point before the Muslims took control of the Kaaba, that Kaaba was filled with what one would call idols. Do your research. The Kaaba wasn't always. Now they'll sit there and say, you're crazy, you're this, you're that. I think it's crazy to walk around a square cube and then kiss a black stone and then tell people the stone became black because of all the people's sins. Okay? That's some crazy shit to me. I'm sorry, it just doesn't make sense to me. Don't sit here and tell me you can't be an idol worshiper, you can't practice shirk, right? It's forbidden in Islam, but you're walking around a cube building and you believe it was a meteorite that hit the planet, and you've draped it in a black cloth, and that meteorite is represented by that black stone, and then you go around and make a mugaraj around it, you circle it, and then they go to tombs and throw rocks as if this is fixing their sins, and they're going to talk about idol worship. Okay? Let's not talk about worshiping idols. Okay? When you're worshiping a cube building in a black stone, and you believe that black stone was a meteorite that hit the planet, and you believe people kissing that over the years is what turned it black, that's some spooky ass shit. I'm sorry. I can't get with that. Sorry. All right. That Kaaba was once ruled and inhibited by what we would call idols, or a religious person would call idols. Okay. And I'm saying that to say what men have done over the years, they've taken spiritual paths and systems and compartmentalized them. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, when you do the research and study, it's real simple. When you're reading the first 7 chapters of Genesis, you're reading basically the Sumerian creation story. Understand your history, okay? When was that Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, put together, right? Go back to the biblical Jews who left Babylon with Ezra and came back into Jerusalem to rebuild Solomon's temple. That's when the Torah was compiled. Go do your research. The 6-pointed star is a Babylonian star. It got nothing to do with Judaism. A lot of Jewish or Judaism culture is influenced by the ancient Babylonians. And by the way, if you do the research, a lot of them stayed there because that captivity in Babylon is not what it's portrayed to be. A lot stayed, and not all came back into Jerusalem with Ezra because they were comfortable and very prosperous and happy in their lifestyle in Babylon. You gotta read and understand the history close. I'm pointing these things out because you're going to see where a lot of these paths get intertwined. Okay. Now, another thing to think about, and just throwing it out there, I don't want to go too far, or, off to the left or to the right. But when you go into ancient Egyptian history, okay, this is a problem. And still to this day, I've gotten nothing but theories, Ralph Crandon, Muhammad is people's. I don't want your interpretation. I don't want your opinion. I want to see the text. I want to see the information to validate it, because these are people that refer to books and texts. We don't care. I don't, because I don't think every text can validate every aspect of spirituality. But let me say this: show me an Egyptian document, text, scripture, book, whatever you want to call it, that specifically labels a group of people being in Egypt called the Israelites for 400 plus years. Show me one document. I just want to see one. Can't do it. It doesn't exist. I'm going to tell you why it doesn't exist. Because that Israelite story is copied from a group of people called the Hyksos, the Hyksos, right? The Hyksos now are on a document in Egypt, being there for 400 plus years, and they were driven out, right? By who? Thutmose the First. Pay attention to the name. Thutmose the First. Very phonetically similar to Moshe, Musa, and Moses. It means almost the same thing. He who was drawn from water. When you read that story, it's almost identical to the Egyptian story. I'm sorry, to the Israelite story in the Torah. Now, this can't be a coincidence. If you want further research, go into the Oxford Annotated Bible and go into the essay section in the back on who were the Israelites. And so-called the major religious evangelists and scholars, quote unquote, this is not me, this is them saying this, they probably did not exist. The story was probably grafted from a group of people called the Hyksos, the shepherd kings. So now we got a bigger problem. Here are religious people trying to push a book on you that they're saying is not real and genuine. And the foundation of your book are these people called the Israelites. So if you're saying they weren't real and they didn't exist, then guess what? The rest of your religion is mythology. What do we have left to discuss? Because without the Israelites, there is no Bible. Why? Because they're God's chosen people. And all the prophets come from the line of Israel. And don't tell me it's not important, because the first chapter of Matthew confirms it. Read it. What does Matthew chapter 1 start with? It traces the lineage from Adam all the way up into the prophet Jesus. So bloodline and family was important, apparently, to the biblical God. But if we can't prove the factuality of a group of people called, now I'm not saying in history, because here's where the debate's going to come in. We're not saying from that mythology a bloodline of people called Jews from various forms, whether you go to the original Jews, the Coptic, the Phoenician Jews in Ethiopia, to the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim. I'm not saying lines of people claiming to be Jews didn't merge from that mythology. They did. Because as the mythology became accepted amongst men, groups claimed it. So that's not what I'm saying, because then people are going to go to all the modern day Judaism and religion. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about those who accept the belief system, embraced it, and then that lineage, as it went down in history, traced their ethnicity and lineage to their religious practices. Remember, that's a religious practice. It's not what they are by ethnicity. That's something else. I don't even want to waste my time on that right now. My point being is, if we can't confirm the existence of Israel and the line of the prophets, then what are we reading? Okay, that's the point. All right. So what is in this 10 surahs? I'm going to go through the short overview, because obviously we don't have time to go through them all. That's why I put the book up there, because the book, not that it's lengthy, but they can have anywhere from 20, 30 to 50, 70 surahs. But in the beginning, there is an overview of the surah. So I'm going to use that to go through of what this is trying to convey. All right. In the first surah, Surah Al-Majd, it's actually Majiddu. The Arabic is pretty poor in here. I'm just going to tell you, by the way. The glory. Here's another problem I got with Islam. Okay. When I say a problem, I mean a disagreement with the doctrine. I've always argued this for years. What does Musalam mean? A Muslim. And to show you, especially a lot of the converts here in America, they'll say Muslim means one who submits. That's not what it means in Arabic. You're wrong. Mu is one and salam is peace. Muslim means one of peace. But they, for years, keep telling us it means one who submits. See, that's part of that slave master ideology that I'm talking about. Surrender. Okay, that is not the Arabic word for submit. Muslim does not mean one who submits. That's what they tell you it is. And don't believe me, go look for yourself and look into the language, and you will find out. So it means one who is of peace, right? Or one of peace. That's what you say when you're a Muslim. So how can you be for those, not all, for those that are extreme radicalist Muslim, how can you be one of peace when you're blowing up buildings and innocently killing people and saying you're doing it in the name of Allah? First of all, if Allah wants to take somebody out, he don't need somebody else to do it for him. Let's get that established. You got a weak and pathetic God if he's got to take mere mortals to carry out acts of terror. That's a weak God. I'm sorry. I wouldn't want to follow a punk ass God like that. Think about it. Okay. The creator of the boundless universes, the almighty, all powerful, almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not need any man or woman to carry out an act of terror. He could do it himself. He's a big boy. All right. So the first surah, Surah Al-Majd, the brief surah mirrors Al-Fatiha in structure, and perhaps in purpose, it is short with just 7 ayats, right? So Surah Al-Fatiha, the opening, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin, Maliki yawmid din, Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in, Ihdinas siratal mustaqim, Siratal ladina an'amta alayhim, Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Amen. It's a path, and we're going to go into the first one here. It's a path that says to stay on the path of the upright ones. It's the opening. It's not actually the first surah that was revealed in chronological order when you do your research. So it's asking Allah to stay on the path, the straight and narrow, not be taken off the path by the cursed, etc. Stay loyal to the faith. This one is similar, and I'm going to go to it to show you something here. Now listen to it. Watch this. Hold on. I'm going to get the info just so you can see. I'm going to go into the first surah, right? Just to show you the comparison here. Okay, so the Fatiha, the basic English translation of it is the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful. Praise be to Allah, Lord of the worlds, the beneficent, the merciful, owner of the day of judgment. Thee alone we worship, thee alone we ask for help. Show us the straight path. The path of those whom thou hast favored, not the path of those who've earned thy anger, nor of those who go astray. Some translations say cursed, etc. All right, here's this one. The first one in the 10 surahs, okay? And it's only 7 ayats or 7 verses, right? By the King of the world, all glory to the nameless God, right? Master of the throne of fire, the King of the world, you alone have taken as Lord. First of all predators, devour our foes, show us the path to your kingdom, and teach us strength, for victory belongs to the strong. Right? Ain't that what we do on this path? We devour our foes, not just our physical foes, our internal foes. Remember, we're also mystics, right? A lot of the when you study the history on Melik Taus, the many masks of Lucifer, I don't care if it's Shaytan, it's about starting to devour your weaknesses or your enemies internally and working your way out. It's not just about talking about external physical foes. That's religious stuff, right? And then victory belongs to the strong, very Sith-like, right? Passion is our power. Strength is in our power, right? Very similar. So there's a lot of, as it described in the introductions, it's a very antinomian way of thinking or theology, for lack of a better word. That's it. It's that simple. All right. Now, the second one is called Surah al-Nur, the fire. This surah sets up the rivalry between the nameless God and the blind one and outlines the responsibility of the mortal to choose between them. It also contains references to historical and Abrahamic figures whom it upbraids for failure to properly align themselves, right? So this represents us on the path. Now notice there's 10, and this is why I wanted to do this. There's 10 surahs. We work with the clip path that we know when we leave the 10 and go into the 11th. I almost correlated these 10 surahs to representations of each branch of the clip path. This is just my personal connection with it. I'm not, you find yours. But I find they all have a significance in reference to the journey we take as Black adepts and magicians on this path. Okay? Now, I want to go into a surah here. We've all been faced within our life when it comes to religion and spirituality to make choices, right? If you go into Surat al-Baqarah, the cow, right? There's an interesting thing. It's Surah 2, verses 136. And I've had many discussions with religious people, Muslims, about this. Okay? And it's, let me show you. In Arabic it says, Kulu amana billahi wa ma unzila ilayna wa ma unzila illa Ibrahima wa Ismaila wa Ishaq wa Yaqub wa Asad wa ma'ana utiya Musa wa Lisa wa ma uti rabayuna min rabayin la nufariku baina ashadi minhum wa nahu lahu muslimun. What does that translate to? Say, O Muslims, we believe in Allah, watch this, and that which is revealed unto us, and that which was revealed unto Abraham, and Ishmael, and Isaac, and Jacob, and the tribes, and that which Moses and Jesus received, and that which the prophets received from their Lord. We make no distinction between any of them. And unto him we have been surrendered, right? You want to know what the problem with that is? As I said earlier, and I can't recall the surah offhand, there's a surah in here that talks about where the Jews of Medina altered certain places in the Torah. This is why a Muslim will tell you they don't believe in the Bible. But there's a problem because when you read that surah right there, it says don't make a distinction between any of the prophets. We are to accept what was revealed to all of them from Abraham down to Moses, Jesus, etc. Muhammad. But then there's this difference of opinion. The second surah shows between the nameless one, Shaytan, and this blind God that really is giving blind guidance, is really spewing out a lot of confusion and conjecture. And I pointed that verse out because that verse there can be very confusing. Because if I'm reading that and I got to take it for what it is, I must accept all the books of the prophets. But no. The Islamic scholar will tell you can't. Because, if somebody knows it and can do the research, I know I have it marked somewhere, I just can't recollect right now. There is a surah in the Quran that specifically says the Jews in Medina at a specific period of time altered certain portions of the Torah. So, I mean, look, why all the confusion? That's Surah 2. Making choices and decisions, not being guided by what men say, but making choices and decisions based on You come into the realization of those choices and decisions for yourself. Okay? That's the second. That's the importance of that surah. Third one, Surah Al-Hab, the war. Okay? This surah further outlines the cosmology and cosmogony of the Shaytanic system, namely the creation and the chaos comp myths. I want to go to that real quick. What is this war? Let's go to it. Surah 3. And I'm going to read it a little bit just to give you an understanding. It's, I think it's about 38 surahs. They're not long. It's a very interesting, 41, but I'm going to read some of it. And just to give you an example. Okay. Surah Al-Hab, the war, by King of the World. Dal, Zah, Ka. Say, in the beginning was darkness, alone and eternal, without form and void. It was as chaos. From darkness we arose and established our throne and eon. Then from our eon, the blind one emerged later with a great light. And he established a lower throne and an eon apart, light upon light. One eon for the light, the other eon for the darkness. And a void was between, and we knew not each other. The blind one is the spirit of the light, the spirit of limitation and finitude, and its word is logos, right? And what does it say? What does it say in the book of John, the Gospel of John? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the light shineth in the darkness, right? And the darkness comprehended it not. What is that light that shined in the darkness? Now, the Christians will tell you Jesus, but we know better, right? When we go into the language, we know that that light that shines in the darkness is the intellect, right? This is where Lucifer now comes in, right? And we're looking at the mystical interpretation of this, right? Because as I said before, Lucifer is a mask or archetype that embodies light and darkness simultaneously. One who is or uses the title or term Luciferian is saying they are seeking illumination or light. What illumination or light are they trying to seek? Intellect. One must go into this darkness or chaos to get that understanding, because why? It all has its point of origin and beginnings in chaos, primordial chaos, right? Thence we get the term in mysticism. One must go into the darkness to do the work of the light, right? We hear this in a lot of mystic paths. That's all it's saying. That's all this mask of Shaytan was trying to convey here, and refer to the one of light as the weak one. And then it goes on to say, and we are the spirit of darkness, its Lord and firstborn. And our world is chaos. That's not a bad thing, because all things emerge from chaos. And in order to make order out of something, you must have chaos first. Then order comes, not reverse. It wasn't order came and then chaos. It was all things emerged from chaos. Now the light, or the illusionary light, caused confusion. And it blinded people and created ignorance. That's a little bit different. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Verse 11, and we put forth our power and brought into being the first of the children, our servants, to fill our kingdom. Wave upon wave, rank upon rank. We shape them from the black fire within the darkness. We talk about the black flame of Set on this path, the archetype Set in ancient Egypt, and that all aspects of consciousness emanate from the black flame, right? This is what this is talking about. This is how we interpret this in our spiritual studies. This is why I'm saying, look at this, this writing, whatever you want to label it. You can learn a lot from it, is what I'm trying to tell you, because it removes all the philosophical and faith nonsense, right? And we commanded them to multiply and be many, and it was so. But the blind one did likewise and created his own servants from light. And it was so, light upon light, and they stood forth row upon row, and thus the eons expanded and grew outward and spilled into the void. When the borders of light met the borders of dark, there was a great roaring in the void. And now remember, this is symbolical. I'm not going to sit here and pass this off as if this is just literal, but you understand what it's saying. And from this sound, there came into being the cosmos, the world of matter and space and time. Then we descended into the cosmos, seeking to establish our might within it. And the blind one descended also, seeking to possess the cosmos. And there was strife between us and the blind one, between our children and its own. And we fought the blind one, and it resisted. In our conflict were stars and suns destroyed, and we withdrew to our eon, sending forth the children in our place. Say, O mankind, know you not that your world is one prize among many, a gem within a veritable treasury. And many such gems are held by the blind one taken, and many such are within my hand. Say, O mankind, to you it is allotted to choose whom you shall serve. All right, a couple more. I'm just going to read the rest of it, and we're pretty much done with it. And some are marked by the blind one, and others marked by me. And these know in their hearts to whom their spirit is inclined. You hear that? When you've been resisting for years, this is to people who may have been brought up in religions and have had to force themselves to stay loyal to a belief system, whether it was out of fear, whether it was out of being criticized by others, whether it was worrying about what others think. This is what this is talking about. In your heart, you already knew what thought process you were connected to. Shaytan represents, no different than any other mask on this path, a non-conformist way of thinking. Not going along again with what everybody is saying or doing because that's what everybody's doing. Not agreeing with what everybody's saying or doing because that's what mainstream is saying. It's no different, and I brought up Set just a few minutes ago because it represents Set as far as being connected to what we call the isolated consciousness, a self-thinker, a person who stands on their own, thinks for themselves, regardless if it's in conformity or non-conformity, what mainstream thinks is. They don't care. That's really all Shaytan represents when you read the stories. You can get into all the other spooky shit and that's personal. All right? Verily a day shall come when we put forth our might. We see that happening now. People are losing trust in the system overall. I don't care if it's religion. I don't care if it's politics. I don't care if it's authority. We see there's a different ether in the atmosphere, right? A different energy. Yea, but you shall know, and the world will quake, and the mountains blow like leaves in the wind. Say the blind one has sent his spies and prophets, but we destroyed them all, and Muhammad was the last. Say, but my Lord shall send his anointed, and he shall rule the nations with the iron scepter. They say to you, how shall we treat with those who disbelieve? Your Lord says, assail them as you might. Grant no quarter and show no mercy, for your Lord will show none. And your Lord loves not the coward nor the craven. But when you are able to destroy the houses of the blind one, defile the sanctuaries of our foes, and tear at them with tooth and claw, savage them and their possession, meaning don't conform if you don't want to, okay? Now, all this is just simply saying, why is it saying, when you read, the Quran is no different when it tells you, follow what it says, the Bible, no different, and then uses violence to condone. It's funny how thou shalt not kill is a commandment, but it's okay when God gives the commandment to kill in his name, in his honor. That's funny, that, right? Thou shalt not kill, but he can give the permission when you read various stories in the Bible and the Quran to kill tribes of people, innocent men, women, and children. I don't care if a pagan child, what does a young, according to those historical beliefs, a young pagan child had to do with any of that mess? Why do they have to be taken out? What do they have to do with the nonsense? It just goes to show you ideology. All right, that's Surah 3. Surah 4, Surah al-Sarr. I'm just going to finish these last overviews, and then I'll go into the chat for any comments and stuff. Surah Asrar, the secrets. This is a lengthy surah. This text provides instruction on sorcery, right? In the form of a dialogue between King Solomon and an apocryphal concubine from among the Jinn. This section is perhaps the most heretical of the entire collection, as it relies heavily on blasphemy and inversion of Islamic rituals. So this is probably going to offend the traditional Islamic Muslim. The surah also outlines the basic worship practices of the Shaytanic worshiper. Now, I don't like that word because we don't worship, as I said in the beginning, but it's not really, even though the author here describes the overview as Shaytanic worshiper, I would just say it goes into methodologies and rituals connecting with the Shaytanic energy, because we don't worship. All right, that's Surah 4. Surah 5, Surah Al-Awlad, or Olad, the children. The surah provides an overview of the pantheon at which the Shaytan is the head. Most significantly, it introduces the 3 divine goddesses of the Quran as the daughters and the consorts of the Shaytan. It also provides the cult names of the Shaytan, necessary for devotional and ritual practices, right? That's Surah 5. Surah 6, Surah Al-Arsh, the throne. In this surah, the author provides a view of the Netherworld kingdom ruled by the Shaytan. It is rich in imagery and provides a carnal mirror to the standard Islamic view of paradise, right? Right? And the Muslims call paradise Jannah, right? And they call hell as the overview of this surah, they call hell Jahannam, right? And Jannah, paradise, right? So this gives imagery, right? When you read it, and it's quite extensive, okay? And where is that? Maybe just to give you an example. Let me go on the 6th throne real quick. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just to give you an example. Hold on. Which I thought this was pretty interesting. All right. Here it is here. Now compare this to what you've read in religious texts. In my realm are many mansions. Sounds familiar? Cavernous halls lit with enchanted gems which shine like stars, with wide courts and pavilions. I'm looking for the hellfire and the brimstone. And there you shall find on couches reclining comely youths, male and female, pleasant mates with which to indulge. Rivers there flow with milk and wine. Sounds very similar to the Quran, don't it? And musk and camphor win their way onto gentle winds. Fruits you shall find there, and none are forbidden. So it's giving you the antithesis, right? Armories and treasuries there abound, with spears and arrows, diamond tipped and venom dripping, with swords and heavy maces, forged with the heavy hand, sealed with the seal of wrath. Coats of mail shall you find of jet mail that tires not the wearer, etc. All right, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it gives you some of the detailed imagery. It goes further. That's Surah 6. 7, Surah Al-Dum, the darkness. Here is provided both instructions on ritual prayer as well as an overview of the Day of Judgment. It also contains advice on demonic possession and its value to the Shaytanic current. And I'm going to go to that real quick. All right. And this is an interesting one because it's one of the lengthy ones. Let me just go to one section here to give you an idea. This is an interesting part here. Blessed are they who adore him, for they shall be given sinews of steel. Watch this. Blessed are those who gird up their loins, for they shall be girded with iron that never rusts. And the enemy says, the best of you is he that dies for Allah.
But your Lord says the best of you is he that kills in my name. Blessed are the predators, for they shall be given prey. And what have I been saying for years? This world is only defined by two people, predators and prey. You're one of the two. You're either predator or prey, okay? A predator is an individual, forget the literal sense of it, we're talking from a spiritual sense, is an individual that's a go-getter, that does for self, that doesn't wait around, is not told what to do, can't force shit on them. They take control and charge of their destiny. Those people are predators because they do for self. Prey are the sheeple who sit back and wait to be told what to do, or given all these rules and regulations and laws to follow. That's exactly what this Shaytan is saying here in this text. Watch. So it says, blessed are the predators, for they shall be given prey. Blessed are those who walk as wolves amongst the sheep, for they shall feed with reddened jaws. And blessed are they that conceal their fangs behind a sheep's mask, for they shall endure among their foes. So we're always prepared to do battle. We're ready for battle. It's not about turning the other cheek. That's for weak people. We don't turn the other cheek. Look, you stay in your lane, I stay in my plane. You mind your business, I mind my business. But you cross the line, you're going to get that individual who has the fangs hiding behind the mask of the sheep. Okay? Get that straight. But the best of you are those who pray for the chance to serve eternally. For there are many worlds and many wars, and conflict is the delight of your Lord, right? That's the darkness, right? Then it goes into Surah Al-Taj, the crown. This surah in particular is especially heterodox as it directly assaults the prophets of Abrahamic tradition. The surah ends with admonition on the duties of spiritual loyalty. It basically attacks the ridiculousness of a lot of this religious nonsense, right? Surah Al-Muqudus, the holy, and it's actually Al-Qudus. That's a poor translation. This surah provides both an extended discussion on the theme of spiritual possession of sights and living beings. It also provides a prophetic sequence leading to the end times and the appearance of the Dajjal, or dark Messiah figure. And then the last one, Surah Al-Lil, the night, a brief protective surah. This passage mirrors Surah An-Nas from the Uthmanic Quran. It appears to address the various forms of harm which may be avoided. Now, I will tell you in the back, and I will tell you to use this wisely, because this little book here, is simple and plain as it looks, there's some powerful shit in here. And I'm going to give you a word of advice, a warning, not to scare people. Don't fuck with this part. I'm getting ready to tell you here if you're not prepared for it, because this can, it'll kind of cause some disturbances within you. There's some invocations in the back. You go right to the back of the book of working with the Shaytan and the Jinn and various jinns, right? There's a ritual washing. There is rituals for daily. They call it prayer, but they're more, it's really invocation. You're facing directions, north, south, east, west, and you're invoking the forces of Shaytan and the Jinn. It tells you how to position your hands. Okay, it's some powerful shit if you practice this. There's some devotional or daily practices. There's spiritual sacrifice, minor sacrifice, and ritual sacrifice, which they call major sacrifice, which is offering some of your own blood. If you want a good, well-balanced, okay, let me give you an example of the daily ritual, which I've done this, and this is a great one here. All right. Now, with the Shaytan, if you want to establish regular invocations and practices, it's required 3 times of the day to connect with this energy. Sunset, midnight, and sunrise, right? And the ritual is described where you should start out facing north. You put your hands at both sides. and then you recite from Surah Al-Majd, right? Saying glory to the Shaytan, right? It shows you the whole thing, how to position the hands, things you could say. Now, you can infuse your own stuff here connected to that. I'm not going to get into all that here. But if you're looking, long story short, people always say, what is a good methodology to connect with the path of Shaitan and the Jinn and that type of energy? This is a very good book for that. But I would say proceed with caution because there's a lot of powerful stuff in there. All right. So read it carefully. I would encourage everybody to check out the text. I definitely would. Because there's stuff in there. And again, please, you have to read with an open mind. Obviously, if you're religious, it's not for you. You're going to get offended by some of the stuff in there. I'm just putting that out there. If you could be firm on the path and be religious, if you're open-minded and you just want to study it for research purposes, I would encourage that too. But, and I'm going to tell you this, not to accept what I'm getting ready to say, because that doesn't mean anything. I could tell you the power in there is real. Okay. I don't care what anybody says. And I'm saying that based on experience. And I don't want anybody to co-sign on that. I don't want anybody to accept that because I said it. It's just like people who say they have downloads and shit, right? They got downloads from spirits and gods and ancestors. As I said before, you didn't get a download from my ancestors. Trust me. Okay. Did you get a download? You might have, but stop pretending like you got a download for the whole fucking world. Because that's some egotistical shit, personally. When you really look at it, that's some real egotistical shit. But that's a whole nother story. All right. I'm going to go to some of the questions and the comments. Let me scroll up. Be patient. I'm going to start from the top. All right. All right, so infernal blessings and greetings to all. Get that out of the way for the sake of time. All right, I addressed that with David. I will reach out to you. All right, looking for some questions. Okay, so, all right, Arabian Princess says, I've been waiting for this topic as I come from a family with a long history of working with Jinn for generations, literally. Now, that's interesting because I see your screen name, so I don't know if Arabian Princess, if you are Arab or if you're from the Middle East or what your ethnicity is. I'd be interested for you to type that in. Shit, matter of fact, depending on what you type in, I wouldn't even mind you possibly calling in if you're still here. I can put a phone number up on there and have you call, and I would love to hear that. And I would love to hear it from somebody who comes from a lineage or family line of that. So I'm going to scroll down and see what you put in there. And that would be interesting, the connection and how it's there. That's very interesting. Ishara Nocturnal says, I like working with the Jinn. Now, again, remember, as I said, there's different species or classes of Jinn, right? We've talked about this, several times over the years when you're working with different classes of Jinn. So it's very, very important you educate yourself because this is just energy. I don't care how you classify it. I don't care of you might have your own personal interpretation of it. That's fine. It's about understanding the energy, how to manipulate it and make it work for you, and know what you're engaging in. It's very important. I want to make that clear. So as long as we're doing we're giving ourselves the knowledge and the awareness of what we're working with, especially with this type of energy, it's important to have that know-how. All right. What else we got? Rabia, salam to you. Don't know who that was to. Yeah, the hoopty. Yeah, I was talking about that earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know who that person was. Like I said, there was a person in here earlier. Just I ain't got time for that shit. Okay, so I blocked that whoever that Naga Olmec person was. I ain't got time for that shit. You know, people come in if you are not in agreement with what we're talking about, you're not on board. That's fine. You're entitled to that. But why? I just don't understand why people go on other people's platforms and spend time in there because they're in agreement. Because you're not going to come in here and try to disrupt the topic and what we're getting ready to do and what we got prepared. And you don't have to agree with shit I say. One, I couldn't give a fuck. That's number one. You know me. I don't care. But I'm not gonna let somebody come in here that didn't get enough titty milk and they need attention. Go somewhere else with that bullshit. If this is not for you, it's not for you. And I saw some comment, I think typed in, need some Bobby Hammond. Fuck Bobby Hammond. I don't need no goddamn Bobby Hammond. Okay? And it's no disrespect to Bobby Hammond. Bobby Hammond's not left-hand path. I don't know how many times I got to say that. And I don't know why people still sucking Bobby Hammond's dick or any of those people's dicks. Suck your own dick if you're going to suck a dick. Okay? Stop sucking other people's dicks. That's the problem with people like that. They want to worship people, follow people. Only person I need in my life is myself. Okay? And the only people anybody watching in their life needs themselves. That's what I was talking about earlier in the beginning, where people still feel compelled to follow people. I don't follow nobody. Get that straight. Take it for what it is. I couldn't give a shit. All right, what else we got? Arabia says the devil's Quran. Again, hopefully, I'm not sure, brother or sister, if you are a Muslim, hopefully you didn't get offended by it. No offense purposely. I know if you or any other Muslim is in here, you know, look, like I said, we're adults. We can agree to disagree. If it sounded like an attack, I apologize. It's just things that need to be discussed. So hopefully nothing personal there. What else we got? Arabian. Okay, so you are a Muslim. I hear you. I hear you, brother or sister. I don't know if you're a brother or sister, so. Rabbi Hina Miller says, if your intention is pure, if your goal is to become the greatest version of yourself, then your outside circumstances will reflect and simply bend to your will. Parentheses, work. And that's what this is about. This is work. This is consistency. Like I said, in the beginning, I've been doing this shit for over 20 something years. Okay. Just let me stress this. Just because I may not have been in the mainstream like some of these other people, and again, I don't care if it's Phil Valentine, Bobby Hammond, or any of them. That's cool, and I've watched their videos and learned from them. But I'm tired of people dick riding. And first of all, just because I may not have been in the mainstream circles or known for many years, I've been around doing this for a while. Okay. Some of you who know me before this know how long I've been doing this. And I'm not saying that means anything. It doesn't make me special. It makes me no better or less than any of the before mentioned people. But I ain't sucking nobody's dick. Let's just put that out there. And if you don't agree with what I say, you're entitled to that shit. And it is what it is. But still ain't going to stop me from doing what we do. That's all. But it is work. It is consistency. Without consistency and work, nothing gets accomplished. Yes, Ashara, it's $12 the book. Again, let me put it out there because I like to give you guys the sources. If you came on late, I put it up earlier. It is The Devil's Quran by Martinet Press. I went to the history of the manuscript, how it came about. I'm not going to go through all that again. If you came in late, go back when the video posts after I get off. You can watch the beginning. I would encourage you guys, I'm not saying you need to get the text and incorporate and do the ritual work in there. If you just want to do it for research, it's just an interesting read. Whether you are in agreement with it, disagreement, whether you're religious or not, I think you can learn a lot from it, period. I think a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew can learn a lot from that text, whether you agree with it or not, because some of it might, if you're very traditionally strict in those religious paths, yes, I'm not going to lie, you can get offended by some of the stuff in there. But if you have a very open mind and it doesn't offend or bother you, and I know, like I say, I have a lot of friends over the years,
couple of them I'm still in contact with, and they are very loyal, practicing Muslims. And we have these dialogues. Sometimes we joke about it. Sometimes it gets a little intense, but you know what? We still walk away at the end of the day knowing we're mature adults, that we can agree to disagree. And I respect that. They might say, Brother Beniti, I hear what you're saying. I don't agree with that shit, but it is what it is. And I'm cool with that. Because again, I'm not, as I said earlier, this channel isn't about forcing you to agree with what we discuss here. That's not what we do. I want you to come to the conclusion, whatever it is we talk about here, I want you to do your further research and you embrace it how you see fit, not the way Beniti said it. Now, if there's a lot of things I'm saying that you're in line with, then so be it. If it's natural, that's fine. But I know from doing this for many years, there's going to be a lot of things that I say that people are not in line with, and you're entitled to that, and that's cool. But don't get upset and mad about it. That's all. There you go. And that's true, Talk Will says, kind of just what I just said. Maybe you listen and learn, you ain't got to like or even agree. And that's true. I've sat in platforms, classes, lectures over the year because I wanted to gain knowledge. And there was a lot of things I sat through that I didn't completely agree with, but I knew I needed to sit there and hear different perspectives over the years so I could learn. Because this is how I've formulated my own perspectives. You can't just have tunnel vision and locked in on one ideology and block everything else out. You will never grow spiritually as a person. And this is why I respect any person, I don't care if you're religious, non-religious, who takes the time out to learn other things, whether they're in agreement with it or not. That's not the point. The only way you understand something is if you educate yourself about it. And that's how you eradicate a disease that's running rampant on this planet called ignorance, right? Because most people are ignorant due to the simple fact out of not knowing, which creates an emotion that gives life to the disease of ignorance called fear. And as I said before, people fear what they do not know. That's where fear comes from. You fear shit you do not know or understand. That's it. And sometimes you retaliate out against it and you put up a mask or a veil because that's you hiding your insecurities, AKA your fears. So when you're talking to somebody and maybe their personal ideology, spirituality, or religion is put into question, they retaliate. They get in a retaliatory mode because they've never been put in that situation before. They've never been presented with points that questions the validity of their God and their spiritual path. And I get it, but fact of the matter is, if your God can stand the test of the time and is the all-knowing, the all-truthful, almighty God, you should fear no question from any man. Okay? That's all. So yes, we must learn as adults to agree to disagree. That's fine. But I won't waste my time getting into senseless debates and arguments over people's personal opinions. Opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, right? So opinions don't matter. You're entitled to them. Anybody's entitled to. You could have your own opinion, your own perspective, and your own thoughts, of course. You're an intelligent, thinking, mature adult / human being. You're entitled to that. But also understand there are going to be people who are in opposition to your ideology. And you can't get up in your feelings about it. I don't waste time on that shit no more. There's too much work to be done, number one. This is why I still can't believe in 2021. I know a lot of it is entertainment based. It gets views. There's all these platforms still where people having these pointless, senseless debates. I'm right. I know everything. My system is right. My teacher's the best. My school of thought is best. If you don't believe like I believe, if you didn't study what I studied, we're the hot shit on the block. No, you're not. Okay? You just think you are. Okay? And I don't care what school of thought or what line you come from. Shit is irrelevant to me. Why? All I want to see is the results. I'll respect it more, whether I agree with it or not, if I see the fruits of its labor. Because I can tell you over the years, I know a lot of broke-ass hoteppers. To this day, they broker than a motherfucker. And as I said before, show me a broke-ass pharaoh in ancient Egypt. Show me one. Show me a poor pharaoh that was living in his mom's basement driving a fucking hoopty. okay? Working at fucking McDonald's or some shit, or hustling DVDs. Look, don't confuse a hustle for a business. That's not being successful. You got to hustle. You're making some dough. Cool. I don't recall pharaohs hustling on the street selling fucking DVDs, which who uses DVDs anymore? Selling trinkets. Still living a petty lifestyle. I'm not knocking anybody that hustles, but I got to keep it real. It's a new day and time. Fuck you if your feelings is hurt. It's a new day and time. Don't confuse that bullshit. Let me see look, I'm not judging you based on your materialistic thing. Let me see the crib where you live. Let me see the car you drive. That's going to tell me a lot about you. That's all I want to see. Let me see what's in your pockets. Okay? Because you want to really get down to the nitty gritty. Let me see how your family is provided for. Let me see how your kids have been raised and educated. Let me see the non-dysfunctional bullshit in your family, the non-dysfunctional. If it's dysfunctional, don't sit here talking all this knowledge shit and your shit ain't together. See, the problem is people want to be spiritual gurus and know it all, but their mundane life is a hot fucking mess. And then here's the cop out. Oh, no, see, don't be in this world. Don't be in the world. You know, don't be of the world and don't live in it. And, man, fuck all that. That's for unsuccessful, broke-ass people. I told you all that before. Everybody that says that got some problems. Trust me. That's to justify, because then you might look at that person and go, how the fuck can you be giving me advice on this, that, and you're a hot fucking mess? Think about it. I'm not going to nobody for a consultation. I'm not going to nobody to work with money and business if I don't see a track record of results. That's the other problem. We got all these schemes amongst us. They got all these hustles and scams to get down with, and they ain't got no track record. That's all I'm saying. All right, what else we got here? Rabbi Hina Miller. There's a good book, Knowing the Classes. It's I think it's Working with the Jinn by Bal Cadman. I've referred to that book before. It's a good primer. And one thing I've always said about Bal Cadman, he has a gift of just presenting information so simply and easily to understand. So if you're looking for a good book with the classes of Jinn and how to work with some of these spirits and energies, I've mentioned that book many times over the years. It's Working with the Jinn, or the Jinn by if you just type in Jinn Bal Cadman, it'll come back up. I'm sure if somebody's online, they can go on Amazon, Google it, and put it up. It's a very good book because it's straight to the point, very easy to understand. And that's one of the gifts I feel Bal Cadman has. All right, Rabbi Inamil says, which discipline does one employ to lengthen the amount of time spent in the astral? Intention is to study a lifetime of work, then return to the body, since time is so limited on earth. All right, step one, I wouldn't focus. It's not about. The problem is when you have the thought of trying to lengthen the amount of time in the astral, that's actually creating the block of why you can't stay in there long enough. It's the old spiritual adage. I'm not saying you, just in reference to your question. It's the old spiritual adage, do without doing. Sometimes we can over-intellectualize and overthink ourselves. Just learn to embrace the moment. When you're doing ritualistic work, meditation, astral travel, any of those things, engulf yourself and embrace the moment. Don't try to have preconceived thoughts of how you're trying to map it all out. I'm just putting that out there in general. Just be very wrapped up in the moment, clear with your mind and your intent clear. As far as the length of the time, how long you stay in, or the amount of time you stay in the astral, and whatever experiences you have, that will naturally flow when you just do without doing, as they say. Okay. So that's kind of it's a mindset, and that will just gradually, naturally start to flow, regardless. Short amount of time, long amount of time, it's irrelevant. All right, what do we got here? Yeah, men worshiping men. Arabia says, I never follow hadith, the Quran alone. Well, I commend you for that, brother or sister. Because as I said earlier, you will find a lot of these, what they label as sects of Islam, a lot of them follow hadiths, right? And some of these hadiths are just ridiculous, okay? And some of them are contradictory against what the Quran says. And then I read that Surah chapter 2, verse 1, when what is in doubt in this book referred to what came before it, which were the books of the prophets, etc. Right? So there is a criteria. I'm saying according to Islamic theology, there is a criteria. It doesn't say refer to the tales of men for guidance, right? According to their Quran, it says refer to what came before it. In this book alone, there's no doubt it is a guidance to what's in it. That's right there in the Quran. So at what point in the history of Islam did Muslims, not all, the ones that belong and started all these man-made sects, at what point did they embrace the tales of men / hadith more than they did the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That was the point I was trying to make earlier. And for those and such as you, brother or sister, because I don't know if you're male or female, I commend you if you stay with the Quran alone. I commend you for that. I respect you for it because at least you are an example of what your religion teaches. Though I may not agree with it, but I have the respect that you stand firm on what the religion represents. And I respect that. And I have friends who are the same way. They might study the hadith just for research purposes, but they don't follow it. And I don't think any good practicing Muslim should follow any hadith, because the Quran says it is the best of hadith or tales, right? That's what the Quran says. So what other book do you need if you're a Muslim other than the Quran? It doesn't mean you don't read any other books, meaning as far as for guidance. But it did say, and really not just in that one verse, Surah 2, verse 136, it says if there's confusion of what's in doubt to this book, then you should refer to the books that came before it and have that open discussion, right? It talks about the Injil, which was referred to as Isa's book, right? The book of Revelations, right? It talks about the Torah, and it is a guidance for people that it led, right? So there is a protocol that's followed there. I don't see anything in the Quran where it says, when in doubt, follow the Sunnah or the Hadiths of Bukhari. It doesn't say that. Now, who's Bukhari? Bukhari was a Russian convert to Islam. So I just don't know where this shit comes from. But anyway. All right. Smooth Shaddai says how you connect is personal, 100,000%. Okay. All right, what else we got? Good point. I don't know. I just want to make sure I'm not saying your name wrong. I know you kind of look like the way you got it written. I'm just going to call you Sio so I don't butcher your name. It might be Sionpat. I just don't want to pronounce it wrong. Yes, veganism is not spirituality. It's funny because this topic has come up many times over the years. Look, veganism is a dietary choice. Is diet connected to your spirituality as far as what you intake can affect, say, meditation, spiritual studies, and growth? Yes, there's a connection there. But has it been over the years? It's almost passed on as some form of religion. That is not. It's not. Spirituality is a dietary choice. And I'm all for being conscious of what you eat and don't eat. I'm all for with having knowledge of how that can affect you on a mental, emotional, and a spiritual level. I'm all for that. But some people can get fanatical with it. So I do agree. And as I see Ashara says after that, it can get so fanatical where vegans persecute other vegans. Well, here's something on if you claim. Now, remember, vegetarian and being vegan is two different things. A vegan is supposed to be somebody who doesn't eat any form of the animal, whether it's byproducts of the animal or anything. I mean, it's strict vegetarian. Well, here's the thing. We got a lot of Whole Foods vegans out here, right? You are not an 100% vegan if you are not growing that shit from the earth and plucking it from the earth yourself. Just because you go to Whole Foods and buy vegan products does not make you a vegan. Go do your research. They just got busted not too long ago from importing a lot of shit from China that they were claiming was organic, from fruits, vegetables, and meats. Okay? You all probably heard about this. There's nothing new. Okay? And anything that's got to be transported, understand this, it has to be injected with preservatives to keep it preserved. There's nothing that goes on a truck that needs a certain shelf life to make it from one point to another that is not injected with some form of preservative. I don't care if you're buying a natural bag of nuts, right? Because you can get these nuts for all I care. No, stop. People have, I call these people Whole Foods vegans or fresh market vegans, right? They think because they go in there and they're spending more money, they walk out and they got their nose. Look, it's no different than going into the supermarket and eating that shit that they inject with steroids and chemicals to preserve it. All of those things in that store too have preservatives in it to keep it preserved. I don't give a shit what they tell you. Listen, I've heard all the stories. So I say that to those vegans that might be persecuting non-vegans. We shouldn't be judging people based on that. Stupid. All right. I'm not sure. Maybe George Vidon says Ishan spirituality is a main part of Islam about purifying the self and gaining God consciousness. Oh, yeah, I'm all for that. Arabia says, I'm a Sufi, a Jew, a Jehovah Witness, and a Muslim. That's a lot. Okay, well, that right there, a lot. I'll be honest, it's a little confusing because I don't know how. I mean, look, you're entitled to be any of those things, but I'm bringing up the point. I'm just curious at how the Jehovah Witnesses, how they would feel about maybe not so much the Judaism practices, but Sufism and Islam. But hey, to each his own. Each his own. That is something new to me. To each his own. All right, what else we got? So Siampad says, I think it's more the other way around. People are so pressed about vegans for some reason. I don't understand where all the hatred comes from. I guess it depends on the circles you walked in. Now, I guess in my circles, I found it to be the reverse. So I guess it just depends on the circles you walk in. So for an example, what do I mean by that? Maybe if a lot of people in your circle are vegans, I could see how that could be. I'm not vegan. I mean, I try to eat the best I can. I kind of done research on blood type, and O positive people, most of them turn out not to be good vegans. But anyway, that's another story. You okay, buddy? Go to bed? Huh? Come on. You good? All right. I would just say, I guess that just depends on what circle you walk in. But I could see how it could be reversed. I think that has a lot to do with that. All right. Mystic Moons. All right, so this is a good thing to bring up here. Is the Shaytan the same as the divine feminine energy? No. I know there's a lot. Look, it's a matter. Remember, I said it's energy in the aspect in its totality, because it's all energy. I have seen in certain circles, I've seen people refer to some of these masks as feminine. There's certain paths, like for an example, some of the paths of Ishu. If you go into Candomblé, Brazil, Pombagira is a female Ishu. I think when we try to separate whether it's masculine and feminine, all we're really saying is that the energy in its totality, yes, they do both contain both aspects, but I think it becomes personal when the individual embraces an ideology of male or female. Now, understanding gender, understand this, on the physical realm and the spiritual realm is two different things. And I likened that before many times over the years to some female archetypes who spiritually carry more of an energy that's very masculine in nature. So I'm saying all this to say a lot of it is how the individual taps into it, because I've heard people over the years classify some of these energies as male, some of them as female, and vice versa. I think a lot of that comes from your own personal work. But can you classify any one of them specifically this or that? No. So then you say, well, why are a lot of them presented as males? They're not presented as males in the sense of what we know as gender, male, female. If you look at a lot of them, they're very androgynous. If you really, and I say that because in essence, they all embody an aspect of the divine masculine and feminine. Because even when you look at some of the male darker archetypes like Samael, Lucifer can be very androgynous. And I think this is what I mean when I say how a person taps into it. They might connect and link in more with the feminine energy, so they might classify a specific archetype or demon or spirit or whatever as being feminine, and that's fine. But I don't think anybody can wholeheartedly say that this particular spirit, that energy is feminine or this or that. And maybe that's the way you connected to it, and that's fine if you want to say it like that. But to, put that out as a whole, no. So Arabia says, this is interesting too. I have to be all if God had the same message in all us. One book complete the other. Well, I kind of get where you're going with that, but there is some kind of inconsistencies in that. I think the confusion comes that a person with just common sense can say, why did God have to keep sending another prophet with another book? Now they'll say, well, because human beings went astray and they needed more guidance, so another prophet had to come. So we had the Torah, right? We had the books of the prophet. We had Revelations, giving the whole layout of the end of the world. People still didn't listen. Then we had the last of the prophets, Muhammad, or as they say, the seal of the prophets. I think where the confusion comes in, and I understand your concept, and it would be nice if that was the case, and that's how the world was when it came to monotheism. But the reality is we've got a hot mess in the world because of it. Because here we are, we have not you, because as you say, you, from what you said up there, you embrace and combine all those paths. So this is not to you. I'm just speaking in general now. We have three main branches of what we call monotheistic religions: Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, where they all claim to follow the same God, but they're at war with each other and killing each other. So they don't have that personal understanding. And the sad thing is the biblical and the Quranic God allows it. Okay. So we have Muslims, Christians, and Jews who claim to believe in the same God, but they have a difference of opinion on books and prophets and guidance and rituals and practices and ideologies. So we just disregard intelligent conversation and we kill. So unfortunately, it's created a lot of confusion. All right. Mark Dollar. I'm not sure if you're still here, brother. I did not get an email. I don't know how long ago you sent that. It is possible because I get so many of them. I could have overlooked it, which I don't think I did. Or it'll happen once in a while. I might have went to my spam/junk box. So not sure if you are still here, brother. If you are, please resend me an email and I'll look out for it. It was not intentional. I do not recollect seeing it. Okay. Senpai, yes, I do think an atheist can be spiritual. Now, I've also found over the years, remember, spiritual, how I look at spiritual, I can't explain, and I don't look at spiritual in the mainstream definition. Spiritual to me is when a person is confident on their path of self-mastery. That's spirituality to me. Spiritual to me isn't being holy and praying and meditating and all that. Those are practices that one might define as spiritual. I think an atheist can be spiritual because an atheist takes on a nonconformist mentality. So that to me is a form of self-mastery. But really understand the phonetics of the word, because when you say atheist, we have the English language mixed in with the Greek. And when you're reading your Bible, when you're reading the Gospels, and you're reading the New Testament, which is translated out of the ancient Greek, anywhere you look when you see the name God in Greek, it's theos, right? Theos spelled in English, theos. Theos has root in the English word theory. So when you say you're an atheist, you're saying you have your own theory of life and existence. They're confirming in the Bible that they have their own theory or theos of what God is, because they're calling God a theory. See, we don't stop and take the time to study and research. So I say all that to say, just as they have their theory of spirituality, a theist or an atheist also can have their own ideas. So yes, it's personal. I definitely do think an atheist can be spiritual. And don't define that word spiritual according to mainstream, because then why I'm saying that is because then we're tapping into religion. Can an atheist be spiritual according to religious ideology? Of course not, because religious ideology doesn't permit it. Can an atheist be spiritual outside of religious ideology? Hell yeah. That's the difference. That's all. What else we got? All right, sure. Says, I find balance in understanding my shadow and in learning to heal myself and others through necromancy. So I just want to talk about the first part of that. You must understand your shadow or your hidden self. Okay, you will not be successful doing anything on this path if you don't understand the shadow or the hidden self. Okay, that's just fact. What is the shadow or the hidden self? In quick, simplistic terms, it's the real us that we suppress, good and bad. Most people avoid it. It's understanding all aspects of your ego, those that can be beneficial for you and those that can be detrimental for you. It's not about eliminating all of your ego. It's about understanding it and when to exercise it, because your ego is what protects you, but your ego is what also can get you into a lot of stupidity and trouble, right? It's embracing the strengths and weaknesses of ourselves, but also it's about addressing those weaknesses and not just burying them, or trying to pray them away or meditate them away, or become super Buddha man or Buddhist and thinking that if I just become so engulfed in a spiritual dogma, all my weaknesses and all my issues are going to disappear because I can meditate them away. No. We embrace our shadow or hidden self on this path because we know that's the foundation. And we know if we start there, then we can successfully move forward and be successful in all aspects of life. So I don't give a fuck how many books you read. I don't care how much knowledge you can regurgitate. I don't care how many classes, lectures, courses, certificates, titles you give yourself. All that shit is for naught if you are not dealing with your bullshit, your shadow or your hidden self. I don't give a fuck what it is. Listen, man, I've been there, heard it all before. I've seen from the craziest of the craziest to the most leveled of people in my lifetime. And when I say the craziest, because sometimes people are crazy like a fox, not that type of crazy. I'm talking to the people that are so out of whack, so out of sync, that they're so subjective in nature to everything that they deal with that they've lost sight of everyday reality. These are the people that had that disconnect, right? We always seek that fine line in between the subjective and the objective, right? That's what we do. We're trying to find the right formula of harmony because we know in order to manifest things from our subjective consciousness and bring them into our objective consciousness, we must have the knowledge, the ability, and the formulas to do that through our magic and rituals. Rituals is what transforms and changes your life. That's why we do rituals, right? Not rituals like, on conspiracy theory and YouTube and the Illuminati, and we're doing all these, stop. Come on. Our spiritual practices and rituals is the work that we do to bring about the transformation and change. That's why we do them. We don't just do them because it's cool or whatever the fuck. We do them because we want to bring about change, right? Smooth Shaddai says some vegans can be tough, especially via this internet space, thinking they are more connected to spirit because they choose to eat plants and shit. Look, I'm just going to give you my perspective on this, vegan or non-vegan, real quick. And I've talked about it before in the past. I ain't going to stay on it too long. A lot of diet has to do with understanding your blood type. I've said this many times over the years. You have to be careful, and this is in all seriousness. And this I'm not taking a vegan or a non-vegan side. I've seen over the years. I had a good friend of mine years ago was O positive. He went on the Dr. Sebi diet, and I'm just going to give you this example. Before you take on any strict diet, you should understand every component in your body. You should understand the levels of vitamins, minerals, white, red blood cell count, the lack of, what you're deficient in, what you have too much of. You could have a higher level of iron in the body that you don't need. This is all important to understand before you partake in any strict diet, because like myself being O positive, my friend was. He started to get jaundice after being on the Dr. Sebi diet. And this is no disrespect to Dr. Sebi, because I know a lot of people have had great success on this diet, and I'm gonna tell you why. First, you got to understand that's a diet for people that live in a tropical climate. We need to be clear on that. Not saying that you can't live in a tropical climate and be successful on it. That's all how your body adapts to it. But some people's body don't adapt to it well. Well, long story short, my friend wasn't getting the right levels of protein, okay, from that diet, and that was what was creating the jaundice. And if you know what jaundice is, when your skin and by your nails, and you start turning yellow, and you get these weird looking shit around your eyes. It was coupled with lack of protein with not having the right amount of levels of vitamins and minerals in your body, right? This is important to understand because one specific diet does not work for everybody. So we need to understand that regardless if we're vegan or non-vegan. The problem I think that comes into the difference of opinion when people try to force certain diets, I found by understanding your blood type, to me, and it's worked for me, assists in when it comes to dietary eating. And I found myself, I eat a little bit of everything, but I know when to shut things off. There might be periods where I don't want to eat no meat for a little bit. And if I do eat meat, I try to eat the best quality meat that I can find. But I'll be honest with you, I have to. I mean, when I say I have to, I'm compelled to, because people say, oh, no, see, you can discipline, shake that up, but I don't want to. There's a difference. You understand? So I'll try to eat the best quality chicken. I'll try to eat the best quality turkey when I can. I prefer boneless, a good organic grown chicken. If it's beef, which I don't eat a lot, but I do every now and then, would have a taste for that. I found for O positive, and again, I'm talking about O positive, if you have a well-rounded and don't overindulge or overexceed, I find it to be very productive. Now, that's just me. And I'm not saying anybody that's O positive blood can't be a successful vegetarian. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying in general, you really need to understand the levels, your body, what's in there before you partake of any diet. So it's about educating yourself. All right. But eating candy, eating candy. Look, it's funny you bring that up, Smooth Shadow. I had a brother a couple years back. This shit was funny. I'll never forget this. And he laughed about it because I caught him. I'm going back almost maybe 20 years ago. Could be long. Good brother of mine You know, he was into the vegetarian thing. You know, we used to have some funny conversations about it. Kid you not, true story. So one day I had stepped out. I guess he didn't know when I was coming back. I mean, I'm coming up the stairs and I go by his room. He must have not heard me come in. And when I tell you my man had 2 of them McChicken sandwiches from McDonald's, he was fucking them things up. And when I like opened the door, because he had the door cracked, when I pushed the door open, I was like, yo. And when I opened the door, it was like, you ever catch a little kid in the refrigerator or in the cookie jar? And the way he turned and looked at me, he just laughed. You know, and he said every now and then you know, I guess he was struggling with it. He would slip off. I mean, he's still vegetarian to this day, but he had a moment. But I laugh because there are some fake ass vegetarians out there. I got another brother that's around me right now. This motherfucker, boy, you can't go to a restaurant. He got to eat romaine lettuce. He can't eat iceberg. You know, it's like, yo. So look, each his own. But yeah, you know, don't be judging people. People shouldn't be. If you eating candy on the low and you sneaking chicken sandwiches, don't be judging people, and vice versa. You know what I mean? You know, we shouldn't be too hard on them. If they ain't being hard on us, you know, let it be. Hear them out. I hear you. I think we got more problems though in the world to worry about, vegan and non-vegan. I think that's a small. And that's true. Plants are alive too. So things that look, in order for something to be built, something has to be destroyed or killed. Let me just stress that. I don't care. Let me say it again. In order for a house to be built, what has to be destroyed? Trees to create the wood. Glass has to be crushed to create glass for the windows, right? Soil has to be dug up to plant the soil. Concrete. Something has to be destroyed in order for something to be built or birthed. That's just the process of life. Okay? CM says, well, there's many ways to balance the light and dark. That everything we do on this path is centered around that. It's just by understanding the archetypes and the deities you work with. Now, the Set Heru concept is a great way to understand that. We do work with the aspect of Set Heru. It's about having harmony within yourself of the black habit of the light and dark energy. Really, it's just about laying out your work. There's times where you work with more darker, intense energy, and then there's times where you have to work with lighter, more healing, or more, I don't want to use the word softer, but you understand, lighter energies. Your intuition and your spirit dictates to you when it's time to do that. So it's about when you work with the shadow or the hidden self, that's going to identify areas of work you need to focus on. And by identifying those areas of work you need to work and focus on is going to determine what type of energies or deities to work with, whether they be light or dark. So my simple answer to that question is start with the shadow or the hidden self. That's how you get a good understanding of getting that fine harmony or balance of working with those energies. All right. You guys got jokes about this vegan stuff. Right. Yeah. Vampire, like, all right. And that's a good point by Siampa. I use, as far as vampirism, I know you guys having a back and forth dialogue, and somebody's using the term, this show, vampiric vegan. Yeah, it's not all people that practice vampirism about draining souls. It's about the absorption of energy and consciousness. And I've talked about this before. I'm not going to really get into this now because it's getting around that time. So it's really understanding the subtle body, the energies that come along with it. It's really the giving and exchanging and absorbing these energies and consciousness. So it's not always just about draining. Are there ritual practices where you know, in vampirism, where you can launch attacks in the astral? Like, yes, but that's any path, not just vampirism. That's a lot of magical systems. I've always said vampirism is a tough path because it definitely isn't for everybody, because it's a lot of it is mental, number one. A lot of it is you must have a certain level of discipline to understand it. And I've said this for many years. A lot of people got a lot of messed up understanding of what vampirism is. Then you also have a very traditional aspect of it that's very Gothic, and that's fine. If that's your path and you're into some of the very traditional literal aspects of it, there's that too. And some people have bridged and incorporated all that, and that's fine too. I only work with and deal with, and I would classify it Egyptian vampirism, if that's what we want to classify it. I only work with a high mental spiritual aspect of it. And I've talked about this many times. So yes, there are many different aspects of vampirism. And I've also said this over the years. I don't care if you practice it or not. You can learn a lot from its understanding and the knowledge that it teaches. But you must be a very disciplined person to practice it. It is a very intense path, and it's definitely not for everybody. Okay. Ishara and Nocturnes, all of Job's children are allowed to be killed by the body. Yes, and it's funny because in that book they were all game, and this silly bet that's going on between God and Satan it's ridiculous. Yeah. Yeah, God kills. Yeah, everyone. Really, I mean, here's the bottom line. And again, it's not to be said to piss anybody off. The Bible is a very gory, destructive, very violent. It's a horror story. It promotes death, killing, war, incest, prostitution, all horrific forms of torture, like that in the second book of Kings, where the little children were teasing Elijah because he had a bald head, and he got up in his feelings and sucked a pack of wills on these children to eat them up and devour them. I mean, what kind of sick shit is this? This is in your Bible. You go read it. I'm not making this shit up. It's a horror story. Like, and then people talk about this character, the devil or Shaytan. And then I think we got them mixed up. Who's really this so-called religious devil and who's this so-called godlike figure? I think the religious folks got it backwards when you really look at it. That's crazy. Arabian princesses, yep, a lot to Manat. That's right. That really controlled the Kaaba before the Muslims did. And some researchers say that's really, they took a lot, which was the female, and they named their god based on that. Allah, which is supposed to be the male, right? Now the question is, who existed first? Was it Allah or Allah? Now here's the deep thing. Remember, the Quran was committed to memory, right? It wasn't written down till later. So there's a difference of opinion of how it was revealed. And by the way, the order that you have it in today in your current day Qurans, that's not the order it was revealed in. Actually, Surah 96. What Surah 96 today was originally the first surah. And that surah starts with, matter of fact, let me go to it. Iqra, read, right? What does the word Quran mean? The reading, right? Surah 96. Hold on. Let me go to that real quick. Where is it? That was actually your first surah that was revealed. Let me go to that real quick. And again, check it out for yourself. It's 54. 83, almost there. 90, 91, 95. All right. Surah Alaq, right? This is really the first surah that was revealed, and I'm going to show you why. And in the Arabic, it's Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Iqra bismi. Rabbika allazi khalaq. Khalaqna al-insan min alaq. Iqra wa. Rabbikul akram. And I'm going to show you what this is all saying. Alazil alam bi kalam alame isana ma'a alam kala inana isana ma yakata, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. Here's why it's the first one in English, them first couple verses. In the name of the Lord, the beneficent, the merciful, read in the name of the Lord who created him from a clot. Uluk, right? Falak, right? Read, and my Lord is the most boundless. This is, they say that this Surah 96 is the Surah where the angel Jibrail in Arabic, which is Gabriel, came and presented the Quran to Muhammad, right? And told him, Iqra, read, right? Quran, Iqra has root in the word, Quran means the reading. That's all, that's what you're basically saying. And it's saying that Muhammad, right? And it's not true. You got to do the research. That Muhammad was illiterate. He couldn't read. It's not that he couldn't read. He couldn't read the language that it was being given to him in. See, that's the difference. And that's why the original Qurans were in the Quraysh dialect, because Muhammad was from the Quraysh tribe, right? Or the Quraysh tribe, right? And he spoke that dialect, right? And now then, not to get into a whole history, this is why we have a lot of confusion in the Islamic world, because you have different translations of the Quran. You have the Muhammad Pickthall Quran. You have the Ahmadiyya Quran, the Tariq Tarsal Quran, the Yusuf Ali Quran. Now, a lot of them are different because some of them are in Hindu, Persian, Arabic type of scripts. The translations vary. So that's when you get technical with the languages. But yes, you need to have that understanding. So. Yeah, that was a smooth shot. That was a lot with Arabia. But hey, if it works for that person. So Arabia says, I would go around the Kaaba, but I would never kiss the stone. Okay, cool. I read the system, the Kabbalah was inspired or taken from the Babylonian mysticism. Yes, there's a lot of research and information out there to point in that direction. I think from ancient Babylonian theology, a lot of spirituality and mysticism came from, in addition to the Kabbalah. Yep. All right, what else we got? Yes, the Surah Al-Udir ritual in the book, the Devil's Quran, page 17, number 14, is extremely similar to the sacrifice, the scapegoat ritual in the Bible, where the goat was offered to Azazel, right? Azazel means scapegoat, right? And they believed in that biblical ritual that they could put sins, they could use the goat as an escape and transfer their sins into the goat, and the goat was left out to run wild, right? Well, Azazel, also translated as the one removed, right? And Azazel is the great mystic on this path when we look at the archetype Azazel, because he is the one removed in the sense, because remember, he taught, when you read in the holy books of the Yazidis, the Black Book, and when you read in the books of Enoch, and when you read the story of the Watchers, he was one responsible for educating and teaching those to rebel and stand on their own, right? And what was the movie where they kind of showed that with Azazel? It was the one that I can't think of it. It was with Denzel Washington back in I'm going to say the 90s. And they had, what's his name in it, that was on The Sopranos, and how the spirit of Azazel goes to each one of them. And they used that Rolling Stone song. I can't think of the movie. Somebody might know. They kind of show this. And if you haven't seen that, I go back and watch that movie. All right. All right, what else we got here? I'm not sure the second part of your thing there. I'm just extremely interested. The only difference is state a witch must offer the ghost, while in the Bible it's the priest. It was yes. You can look at it in that regards. Yes. Yeah, you got to draw some of those conclusions with that information again when you're reading this book. Jenny says, I am in a left, and this is my favorite subject matter. My phone's gonna die. All right. What else we got? Rabbi Hina Miller says, Fia, I knew I was done with Christianity when I willingly blasphemed the Holy Spirit. The only sin that won't be forgiven might seem trivial, but for a Christian, that's a big step. Yeah, it's not, don't look at it as blasphemy because that's a religious term. You removed yourself, you rid yourself of it, right? And sometimes people have to do and act like that to clear it from their subconscious. So I look at that as a cleaning out process is how I look at that. All right, what else we got? Halal ben Shakar, right, in the Hebrew is, yes, that's another title for that mask, right? Now, the word hell, actually, it's when we say in that word hell, right? And where they get it from, and first in the Greek, it's Hades, right? Which means a place of hiding or enclosure, right? Yeah, there is a connection to Halal ben Shakar, but not necessarily, that's not where the word hell comes from, because that's one of his son. Because when you're saying son, your Ben is the word son of Shakar, right? Who's Shakar? Shakar is the whisperer, or Kanas, the whisperer, right? All these terms are just different titles and attributes of the deific mask that we call the adversary, right? So yes, a lot of it is in the phonetics of the language, okay? Rabbi Namil says, I equipped Tahuti with the mansions of the moon before the festival of the fifth day had come, invocation to become a crowd, the book of the dead. Yes. Yes, if you do want peace, you have to, in order to have peace, right? There's illusionary peace. Look, when I say peace, and I was going to start doing this, I'm going to start greeting everybody in the name of peace, right? You're going to say, what the fuck does that mean? I'm going to use the 5% nations breakdown of peace. So I'm going to start saying infernal blessings and peace to everybody. What does peace? Well, from the lessons, peace is an abbreviation for positive energy always creates elevation, right? So I'm going to start saying infernal blessings and peace. Your own positive energy always creates elevation. And positive energy is personal, just like peace is personal, not illusionary peace. But you must, in order to have peace, that's a good point. You must have war. You can't have one without the other. So you must create that positive energy that always creates elevation, right? Okay, Arabian princess, you're Yemeni and Lebanese. And it's funny you bring that up because on my father's side, he was part Lebanese. So my connections to some of that Eastern mysticism and Islam comes from that side of the family. Very interesting. Yes, the people of Yemen were very, depending on what you go to. Now, the Yemeni people too, some of them connect them, and some of them can trace their bloodline when it comes to people from Yemen who are Christians to the direct descendants of Jesus. Some that take the mystical path, as you're describing the jinns. There's a lot of different groups that tie heavily into that. So it's very interesting. I'm glad that you clarified that. No, all is known. Bobby is not left-hand path, okay? And I say that simply, if we're talking about Bobby Hemmett does not carry out or do rituals or approach the path the way a person on the left-hand path, quote unquote. Bobby did not work with deities such as Samael. Bobby did not work with deities on the clip hop. Bobby did not really institute any rituals. He incorporated a lot of traditional spirituality in it. You could label it occult because he did talk about a lot of the occult hidden sciences, but I would not label him left-hand path. Okay. For an example, he would talk about, which I don't know where this came from, Aloas, right? There's a video you can pull up, and I just don't know where this connection comes from, that Aloas was a black man on a spaceship coming back to save black people. Now, I don't know how that comes about when Aloas was what Crowley described as his holy guardian angel who revealed the book of law to him. So what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of things there, and look, anybody's entitled to their own personal conjecture, but I wouldn't describe Bobby Hemmett as left-hand path. He talked about some subject matter, but I think if you even ask Bobby Hemmett, he wouldn't describe himself as left-hand path. He was more in that category, or is in that category, of Kemetic consciousness or conscious community type of information, because I can't recall any information where he talks about in detail, for an example, any of the Klepothic deities. That's a big part of this path. Draconian magic, big part of this path. Vampirism, big part of this path. I don't recall Bobby Hemmett talking about any of that stuff. Those are more of the deeper, intense paths of spirituality on the left-hand path. I'm not talking about Baphomet and Lucifer and all that. Yeah, that's the mainstream stuff. But what I'm saying is we have a lot of people who mix occult shit, left-hand path, with Orishi shit, and they're calling it occult, and they're calling it left-hand path. Yes, part of it's personal perspective, but I think if you looked at a hardcore, when I say hardcore, somebody who's really working the intense aspects of the left-hand path, they wouldn't label it that. I don't label it that. I mean, I'm not saying there's not any information you can't learn from it, but I would not label, in my opinion, it's not left-hand path to me at all. Okay. All right. What else we got? Arabian Prison. You're from London. It's 2:30 a.m. here. Whatever you want to say, but I'd love to call on another thing. No problem. You answered my question. I appreciate it. Arabian Princess says I can't watch Bobby Hemmett's videos. Well, Bobby Hemmett, here's the thing with that. He has his own way we all have our own way of delivering messages. So yeah, if you sometimes we all may not vibe with somebody's flow or the way and that's fine. Look, you can learn something from everybody. I'm just speaking in general. You can learn something from him. You can learn something from Dr. Phil Valentine. You can learn something from anybody. But I'm speaking along the lines, and there's a lot of people that are always connecting. Like I say, show me videos where there are clear-cut lectures where he's talking about clear-cut, hardcore left-hand path philosophy. It's not there. I'm not talking about the Baphomet. I'm not talking about Pan and some of that stuff, and that's all cool. But that's a cult. That's not really hardcore left-hand path practices. Okay. That's all. That's all I'm saying. And it's a matter of opinion. It's personal. I don't see it. I wouldn't call him left-hand path because he's more aligned with the Black conscious community, right? Everything we're talking about here is not in alignment with that because it's not accepted. Why is it not accepted? Because there's a criteria, right? This is fact. And you have to be in line. So I'm saying if you really look at what Bobby was teaching, he kept that traditional spirituality and he infused some of the occult. And that was cool because that was his way of getting the message out. And that was a cool thing. I'm not saying, and I'm not faulting him for that, but what I am saying is there are people, I'm not talking about him, there are people who follow him and exclusively confuse what he taught with being left-hand path. That's what I'm saying. That's the difference. So I'm not talking about Bobby Hemmett, and because Bobby Hemmett never said he was left. Show me where he said he was strictly left-hand path. So I'm not. It's the same thing. For an example, what the followers of Haile Selassie did, right? And I've had this discussion with Rastafarians many times over the years. Haile Selassie wasn't the one teaching this savior-like figure thing. That got him blown more out of proportion after he passed and transitioned on. Then his legend became more magnified, and people started putting claims and putting him in a perspective that he never put himself into. And I would get and look, I love my wife's Jamaican, so I love my Rastafari brothers and sisters, but boy, you can get into some crazy conversations with them. And it's the same thing. Go back and look at it. There's some branches of people that follow the Rastafarian teachers and have put Selassie I in a perspective that he did not put himself into. So what I'm saying is it's the same thing with Bobby. Some of his followers have put him in a category that he didn't put himself into. So I'm not saying that in reference to Bobby Hemmett. I'm saying that in reference to some of the people out here now who still might be following. And that's fine. Look, you're entitled to it, but I'm also entitled to speak my perspective. You ain't got to agree with it. That's irrelevant. But I'm just not in agreement that Bobby Hemmett is left-hand path. I'm sorry. There's nothing you can say to convince me of that. Okay, what else we got? Wesley Curry 2. Are you Jewish? I am Jewish. I don't know who you're talking to. Definitely I'm not Jewish. No. If you're talking to me, absolutely not. I am Lebanese and Sicilian. That's my nationality. If you need a nationality definition. No, I am not Jewish. I don't know if that was to me or somebody else. I don't know. Mystic Moons, but okay. I'm going to skip that conversation. Okay, I don't know who this dude is. Okay, Wesley Curry. I think you are in the wrong room. We don't give a fuck about your Jesus and your ghoul analogy. So I think you're in the wrong room. All right, so yeah, goodbye. Hopefully you left. You're in the wrong room, dude. Definitely the wrong room. You must have just been surfing the internet and you stumbled across. All right, what else we got here? Anyway, let's not get distracted with that bullshit. All right, I'm gonna kind of skip down because I'm running out of time here. I gotta wrap this up. All right. Okay, what else we got here? I'm kind of skipping now. All right, I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I see you guys having some. Yeah, and I see that other comment by you, Arabian Princess, that the Prophet Muhammad sent Khalid ibn al-Walid to kill Al-Luz. Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of contradictory shit. Fallen. Thank you for the Denzel Washington movie. Check that out. That was a good movie. I couldn't think of it, man. Thank you for that. Anyway, good stuff here. Listen, running out of time. Probably went over my stay. Real quick. Anything that you need to reach out from the stuff I was saying in the beginning, just a reminder, we've got the Drums of Death ritual this Friday night, February 19th. You must be a Patreon member to participate in that. It'll be a live drumming in the temple down here with some of us locals here that some of you guys that are in Patreon will be able to participate virtually. So if you have your drums, you're going to have some fun with us on Friday night. Must be a Patreon member. We'll have the upcoming class next month, a series that will begin with Tata Nahisi. We'll be going in depth on Palo Mayombe, Kimbanda, a lot of African spiritual systems, breaking them down the traditional and non-traditional ways. Okay, that's going to be available to Patreon members 3, 4, and 5, but you can sign up for that series. Not being a Patreon member, I've posted the information on Instagram and Facebook. The first one of those classes is going to be March 13th. Also, we have a upcoming class on the 6th. Let me make sure that date is right. Yes, I believe it's the 6th, the Saturday before that, the Baphomet class. That's going to be a whole breakdown on the hidden mysteries of Baphomet, what it is and what it's not, because there's a lot of good stuff out there. There's a lot of bullshit out there. That class is coming up in a couple of weeks, March 6th. That is available for anybody to sign up for. That's also posted on Instagram.
and the Facebook. And if you need to reach out to me for a reading or a consultation, shoot me an email. This is the last month for the yearly forecast readings. After February, that is finished. And if you have not checked out the Patreon page, check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/Beniti. I appreciate everybody tuning in. And we will talk soon. All right. Infernal blessings and peace. We out.